My name is Mara McCoy, and by the age of 32, I had mastered the art of dissolving. Not just being invisible, disappearing. It was convenient for the family. No one notices a mirror unless it reflects light, and I was that mirror. Faceless, quiet, standing in the corner while others shone. My father's retirement party was yet another demonstration of this hierarchy. The banquet hall was awash in gold, crystals, and fake smiles. People flocked to congratulate him on his 40-year career, clapping him on the shoulder and drinking champagne. They admired his brother Tyler and his startup, adored his sister Madison and her office with its panoramic windows. No one asked me anything, and I knew why. I stood against the wall, holding a glass of mineral water, observing. Observers recognize each other at first glance, so I spotted him right away, Marcus Chen. He was about 50, standing straight, confident, and silent. He wasn't listening. He was reading people. He had something I'd long ago forgotten how to see in the McCoy family: attention. And then Tyler filled the room, loud, gleaming, self-assured, like a comet accustomed to being the center of its orbit. He noticed me, and from the width of his smile, I knew he was about to have a moment. "Mara, come meet me," he said with feigned friendliness, wrapping his arm tightly around my shoulders as if declaring his ownership. "Marcus, this is my sister, Mara McCoy. Well, she's our type." Marcus extended his hand. "Nice to meet you." "Likewise," I replied evenly, almost without intonation. But evenness doesn't survive in a family where sarcasm is the primary language. Tyler couldn't resist. Our Mara is a living reminder of how not to live. Laughter. Thin, cold, like cracking ice. I remained motionless, a habit. Mom immediately flew up, her lips curling into a theatrical smile. "Tyler, don't be mean. She's just searching for herself." Dad, raising his glass, added with a hint of mockery, "3 successful kids and 1 independent. Well, what can you do?" And Madison, always spot on with the finishing touches, chuckled, "Yes, a walking example of what not to do." The room erupted in laughter again. The people who were seeing me for the first time laughed the loudest. Their laughter was shared, like a password to an elite club I was forbidden from entering. Only Marcus didn't laugh. His face remained calm, but his eyes were attentive, cutting the air. He was watching. He understood everything. Tyler, pleased with the attention, continued the show. "Here I am, managing a $50 million startup. Madison is a marketing star, and Mara is freelancing." He made air quotes with his fingers. "Cute, right?" More laughter. Everything inside me flared. Anger, shame, exhaustion. But I remained silent. Let them think I'm a nobody. Let them not know that I wrote those very articles that half their colleagues read, that I consult for people who pay more than Tyler saw in a year. Silence is my bulletproof vest. And suddenly I noticed. Marcus took out his phone and quickly typed something. My name. He was reading. And then he looked at Tyler as if he were seeing him for the first time. There was icy disdain in that look. "How much of your Series B funding have you spent so far?" he asked calmly. Tyler blinked, confused. About 30%. What?" "Because I'm reconsidering my investment decision," Marcus said. Silence fell over the room, as if someone had turned the sound off. "What? Why?" Tyler breathed out. Marcus nodded toward my family and me. "Because of what I just saw." Mom blinked. "Oh my God, it's just a family joke." "No," he replied coldly. "It's an indicator." And then, the verdict. "I'm withdrawing the funding. Immediately." Tyler's face turned white. "You can't." "I can. The team character clause. You violated it." Madison froze. Mom bit her lip. Dad sagged as if he'd aged 10 years in a second. The crystal chandeliers no longer sparkled. They burned my eyes. Marcus nodded briefly to me, as if acknowledging, "I see," and he left. Tyler rushed after him, screaming and pleading, but he didn't turn around. I didn't turn around either. I put the glass of water on the table and headed for the exit. Behind me, screams, commotion, panic. I knew who they would blame. Me. By the time I got into the car, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Tyler, Mom, Madison, all in a loop, like a rescue signal I no longer had to listen to. I didn't pick up the phone, because for the first time in 32 years, someone heard a family joke and didn't laugh. And in the morning, when I turned on my phone, it exploded with notifications. 24 missed calls, dozens of messages, voicemails from everyone whose voices I knew by heart. And not a single one I wanted to hear. The first message from Tyler flashed on the screen. "Mira, pick up, urgent." The second arrived almost immediately. "You have to fix this." Of course, fix. It's simple in the McCoy family. If a man ruins something, a woman has to fix it, especially the one who always stood in the shadows. I ignored his messages. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and tried to focus on work. Morning reports, clients, spreadsheets. But the phone rang again. The home number. That meant one thing: Mom. I exhaled and answered. "Mira," her voice trembled. "Your brother is in crisis. Everything is falling apart. You have to help." No greetings, no "how are you," just the verdict. "I don't owe him anything," I said calmly. "You embarrassed him in front of the investor." I smiled, dryly, without joy. "No, Mom, he embarrassed me. Marcus just finally saw it." "Oh, come on. You were just being teased," she waved him off irritably. "They tease you in private," I snapped. "What happened yesterday was a public humiliation." Silence. For a second, it seemed like it had gotten through to her. But then she returned to her usual routine. "Mira, Tyler's company could collapse because of this. People will be out of work. They have families." I closed my eyes, clutching the phone. She was reading an old script where I was the culprit. "He should have thought of them sooner," I said quietly, "before making a fool of me. You're just getting revenge." "No, Mom, I just stopped lying." I hung up and blocked the number. Meanwhile, Tyler was already drowning. At noon, a letter arrived, official with a signature. Notice of withdrawal of funding from Marcus Chen. I opened it even though I knew I shouldn't. Dry language, legal jargon, 30 days to settle. And that very paragraph that would now hang over him like a death sentence. After witnessing the founder publicly humiliate a family member at a private event, the investor finds a fundamental character flaw. Character, a word Tyler had always considered unnecessary for success. I sat staring at the screen between anger and a kind of empty numbness. The phone rang again, an unfamiliar number. Against all reason, I answered. "Mira?" His voice was broken, his breathing ragged. "Tyler, you shouldn't have let him write that." "You gave him an excuse, Tyler." "I didn't mean anything bad." "You did, my whole life. It's just that the first time someone heard it, I understood." He sucked in a breath. "It's over," he exhaled. "There's no way to pay the salary. The investors are demanding a meeting. The co-founders are furious. I need help, Mira. You have connections, corporations, suppliers. You can—" "Enough," I interrupted. Silence. "Why?" he squeezed out. "Why won't you help?" "Because I want to hear at least one reason," I said quietly. "Why should I?" A pause that seemed like an eternity. And then, unexpectedly, "Because I'm your brother." I smiled, bitterly, tiredly. "It's funny. You only remember I'm your sister when you need something." "That's not true." "Then tell me at least one time you stood up for me." He was silent, and in that silence, I heard the answer. I hung up. He called back. I blocked that number too. And that evening, an email arrived from Robert Chen, Senior Vice President, a former client. Subject, regarding yesterday. I opened it. Mira, I attended your father's retirement party. I didn't know you were his daughter. I worked with you on a project for Walmart. You saved the company tens of millions. I want you to know what your brother said was not only rude, but also untrue. If you ever need a recommendation, reach out. I read it twice and felt a soft yet painful tightening in my throat. Someone finally saw me as a person, not just a shadow of someone else's achievements. It shouldn't have touched me so deeply, but it did. Later, another email from Marcus. Subject, apology. My heart beat faster. I opened it. Mira, I hope you're well. I want to apologize for the awkwardness last night. When I reviewed your credentials, I discovered articles in Forbes, published research, and projects with some of the largest U.S. retailers. The contrast between your results and your family's attitude shocked me. My decision to withdraw my investment was not only a business one, but also a moral one. If you ever need a recommendation, a contact, or an introduction, I'm at your service. Sincerely, Marcus Chen. I reread it 3 times. Then I typed a short reply. Thank you for seeing what others didn't want to see. You have nothing to apologize for. You did the right thing. Mira. I hit send, and for the first time in years, I felt truly seen. Meanwhile, Tyler's world was crumbling with increasing din. The first week, missed payouts, mass layoffs. The second, investors leaving, Marcus's network blocking all avenues. Third, the co-founders resigned. Fourth, the company shut down. The office was empty, the website was dead. 4 weeks ago, Tyler McCoy shone in the chandeliers, praising his empire. Now, not even its ruins remained. But life, with its twisted symmetry, decided to add a touch. At the very moment his world collapsed, mine straightened. New email. Subject, consulting request. Reference, Marcus Chen. Fortune 100 retailer, 8-month contract, 7-figure fee. I leaned back in my chair, confused, almost stunned. Marcus hadn't just stood up for me. He'd opened a door my family had never even tried to knock on. Maybe success isn't passed down through blood. Maybe none of them knew what success looked like when it wore my face. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care. 2 months passed. 2 months of headlines, gossip, LinkedIn posts philosophizing about ethical leadership. My Forbes article came out almost as a whisper, but it resounded like thunder. Tyler's name wasn't mentioned, but everyone understood. Investor pulls $8 million funding after witnessing founder publicly humiliate family member, a renowned logistics consultant. The world quickly pieced together the puzzle. Tyler's inbox was flooded with accusations. Mine was flooded with collaboration offers. Fate apparently also favors symmetry. Madison was the first to break down. She wrote, "We need to talk." I didn't want to, but I called back anyway. "Mira," her voice trembled. "What do you need, Madison?" "I want to apologize." "For what?" I sincerely wanted to hear what she would choose. That evening, everything got out of control. We were just joking. "No," I answered quietly. "You weren't joking. I didn't mean to offend you. You called me an example of what not to do. That's not a joke, Madison. That's faith." Silence. I felt awkward. Tyler shouldn't have done that. Were you awkward when Mom laughed, when Dad nodded, or only now when the consequences have caught up with you all? Silence again. "People say Tyler has no character," she whispered. "He does." "Mira, tell me I'm wrong." I didn't say. She added quietly, "I'm sorry you were hurt." I exhaled, briefly, tiredly. "This isn't an apology," I said. and disconnected the call. She never called back. Then my father called. I'd unblocked his number a week ago, purely out of masochistic curiosity. His voice was quieter than in my memories. Mira, I've been thinking a lot. About what exactly? About how we treated each other that evening. And long before that evening, too, I added. A long pause. I'm sorry. It was awkward, unpretentious, but honest. And that's why I didn't slam the door. Thank you, I said, but that doesn't mean everything's fixed. I know, he replied quietly. I just want to start somewhere. We hung up on a shaky, but still real, foundation. And that was already a lot. Tyler was the last to arrive. 6 weeks later. This time, I opened the door. He looked smaller. Not physically, but internally, as if he'd lost the self-importance he'd held himself to. He sat down on the couch, his shoulders slumped. I've lost everything, he said. The company, the money, my reputation. Now I'm applying for jobs I once scoffed at. I nodded silently. And I deserve it. I glanced up. For the first time in forever, he wasn't playing the part. I'm seeing a therapist, he continued. She says I grew up obsessed with winning. I perceived anything that didn't fit into my frame of reference as a threat. I looked at him in a new way, without contempt, but without pity either. Simply, really. I'm sorry, Mira, he said quietly, for that evening, for all the evenings, for judging your worth by his own metrics of success. Those were the words I'd been waiting for my whole life. They weren't healing, but they sounded human. I took a deep breath. Okay, I said. Is that all? He looked up. What did you expect? I asked. Forgiveness? He hesitated. Yes. I don't have that for you yet, I said calmly. Maybe one day, but not today. He nodded, and for the first time, he didn't argue. Before leaving, he lingered at the door. Mira, were you really as successful as Marcus said? I met his gaze. I've always been like that. You just never looked. He closed his eyes, and for the first time, he truly understood. Then he left. And 6 months later, everything turned upside down again. A national logistics conference, 400 attendees. I was the invited speaker. I'm standing backstage, and somewhere inside, the girl who's been told for years that she's nothing still trembles. When I walked out on stage and saw hundreds of faces leaning forward to hear me, something inside me snapped into place. It was as if the spine of my soul straightened. I spoke for 40 minutes about logistics, efficiency, about not losing yourself in the systems you build. Everything I knew, I learned myself, without inheriting a name or a myth. And when the audience erupted in applause, for the first time I believed I wasn't here by chance. As I walked off stage, I saw him. Tyler was standing at the exit, and for the first time in a long time, he looked calm. That was amazing, he said. I had no idea how respected you are. I know, I answered simply. He swallowed, as if swallowing his own pride. I'm proud of you. I nodded. No hard feelings, no warmth, just a statement of fact. You should have been proud of me sooner, Tyler. I know, he whispered. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was recognition. And for now, that was enough. Later in the evening, I went down to the hotel bar to just take a breather. And there, as if fate had decided to complete the symmetry of the day, Marcus appeared. He sat down next to me and smiled as if he'd long since foreseen everything that was to come. Mira, he said softly, you were the highlight of the conference. I didn't know you were here, I replied. I'm on the board of advisors. I come when someone truly interesting speaks. We talked for almost an hour about changes in the industry, about leadership that doesn't require shouting, about the difference between loud success and quiet influence. It was the kind of conversation I'd always missed. Honest, profound, mature. And then he said something that stuck in my memory. "Your brother didn't lose everything because of you," Marcus said, taking a sip of wine. "He simply couldn't maintain his facade when the truth confronted him." I looked into my glass and realized he was right. I hadn't destroyed Tyler. He had confronted his own reflection. When Marcus stood up to leave, he said one last thing. "Understand, Mira, you're no longer invisible. People finally see you, and you deserve it, not in spite of your family, but because of yourself." After he left, I sat alone for a long time. Not elated, not euphoric, peaceful. In that rare silence when you don't have to prove anything. Because the man who had wanted to be noticed his whole life finally stopped wanting to. And that's when he was seen. 3 years later. 3 years since that party, since that humiliation that became the turning point. 3 years since Tyler realized the consequences don't ask for permission. The world had changed, or maybe I'd finally allowed myself a place in it. I no longer sought clients. I chose them. 3 Fortune 100 corporations, 2 book deals, international panels, interviews, articles. I was recognized at airports. Companies waited months to get on my schedule. My work spoke louder than 32 years of silence. But I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I felt resilient, as if I'd finally become myself, not hidden, not rejected, but simply visible. The family drifted apart. Mom and Dad now sent holiday cards, politely, formally. I responded in kind. Some bridges aren't worth mending. It's enough to acknowledge they were once there. Madison didn't write, and I didn't write to her. Not because anger is just emptiness. Some connections don't break. They dissolve. And Tyler, he changed. I worked at a modest logistics company and rose to senior manager. No flashy titles, no ostentatious glamour, but honest. We texted occasionally, dryly, to the point. He'd ask for advice, I'd reply. He'd send a photo of a project, I'd like it. There was no longer a war between us. And that was enough. And then, a package. No return address, just my name, handwritten. Inside, a Forbes magazine, the very one with that article. On the first page, a short note in handwriting I recognized instantly. "Mira, I finally read it. All of it. You've always been successful. I just wasn't looking." I sat holding the magazine like something alive. Tyler hadn't read it then. He'd simply ignored it. But now, he did. Not out of forgiveness, not as a gesture, simply because he'd finally seen it. For real. Later that evening, I put the magazine back on the shelf. Not as a victory, not as revenge, as a reminder. A reminder that success isn't about applause, but about whether you stop expecting it. That recognition from strangers means nothing, and recognition from those you care about only comes when you no longer need it. That I didn't destroy my brother, he simply showed himself. And that the woman who went unnoticed for 32 years is now impossible not to see. I've learned one thing. Don't prove yourself to those who don't want to see. Don't diminish yourself for those who fear your growth. Don't explain your worth to those who invest in your downfall. And never burn yourself out to warm their cold. Some stories end in revenge, others in breakup, still others in forgiveness. Mine ended differently. My brother lost everything trying to impress an investor. I gained everything because that investor finally saw. It wasn't meant to be. It's not karma. I was just successful before.